Fleet Commander Taemin stood on the bridge of his massive warship, looking out at the stars. He had spent 20 years climbing the ranks of the Galactic Empire's navy. Today felt like any other boring day on patrol duty near the outer rim of known space. The bridge was huge and shiny. Gold and silver metals covered every surface. Hundreds of lights blinked on control panels. The crew moved around quietly, checking their stations. Everyone wore the same dark blue uniforms with bright medals and ribbons. "Commander," called out Communications Officer Hyejin from her station. "I'm getting some strange readings on long-range sensors." Taemin walked over to her panel. He was a tall man with sharp eyes and a proud way of walking. His uniform had more medals than anyone else on the ship. "What kind of readings?" Hyejin frowned at her screen.
"There's a ship approaching from the edge of our sensor range, but the design doesn't match any known Imperial vessel. It's not from any of the other major empires either." "Pirates?" Taemin asked. "Pirates sometimes used stolen ships or built—"
"Their own crude vessels. I don't think so, sir. The energy signature is too clean, too powerful. But the construction looks—" She paused, trying to find the right words. "It looks simple, almost primitive." Taemin laughed. "Primitive but powerful? That doesn't make sense. Run a full scan when they get closer." The Empire had ruled the galaxy for over 3,000 years. They had the best technology, the strongest military, and the most advanced science. Nothing in the known galaxy could match their power. If a ship looked primitive, it probably was primitive. An hour passed. The unknown ship moved closer to their position. Hyejin kept watching her sensors, and her frown got deeper. "Commander, I'm picking up more details now. The ship is big, really big. Maybe twice the size of our heavy cruisers. But the hull design looks like something from 1,000 years ago. Simple metal plates welded together." "Any weapons?" Taemin asked. "That's the weird part. I can see what might be weapon ports, but they're not using any technology I recognize. No plasma arrays, no quantum torpedoes, no antimatter cannons." Taemin felt annoyed. He had important things to do, and some backwater species was wasting his time with their junk ship. "Open communications, let's see who these fools are." Hyejin pressed some buttons on her panel. After a moment, she nodded. "Channel open, sir." "Unknown vessel, this is Fleet Commander Taemin of the Imperial Navy. You are approaching restricted Imperial space. Identify yourself immediately." That OR response came through clear and strong. The voice was calm and spoke perfect Imperial standard, but with an accent Taemin had never heard before. "Greetings, Commander Taemin. This is Captain Wusung of the Earth vessel Indomitable. We come in peace and request permission to approach for diplomatic contact." Taemin blinked. "Earth? I've never heard of this world. What empire do you represent?" "Represent humanity, Commander. We come from a planet called Earth, about 400 light-years from your current position." Hyejin quickly checked the star charts. She shook her head at Taemin. No records of any inhabited worlds in that area of space. "There are no known civilizations in that sector," Taemin said into the communication system. "You're either lying or lost." Captain Wusung's voice stayed calm. "We understand this may be surprising. We have only recently begun exploring beyond our local star cluster. We would very much like to establish peaceful relations with your empire." Taemin almost laughed out loud. These humans, if that's what they really were, had no idea what they were dealing with. The Galactic Empire didn't make friends with primitive species. They conquered them or ignored them. Listen carefully, human. You are in Imperial space without permission. Your primitive vessel poses no threat to us, but your presence here is illegal. Turn around and go back to whatever backwater world you came from." There was a pause. When Captain Wusung spoke again, his voice was still calm, but something had changed. Something harder. "Commander, we have traveled a very long way to make this contact. We hope to meet with representatives of your government to discuss mutual trade and cooperation. We mean no harm to your empire or your people." "Your hopes don't matter," Taemin said. He was getting tired of this conversation. "You have no authority to be here. You have no right to make demands. Leave immediately, or we will remove you by force." Hyejin looked worried. She kept checking her sensors and shaking her head. "Commander," she whispered. "Something's not right about their ship. The energy readings are getting stronger." Taemin ignored her. These humans needed to learn their place in the galaxy. The Empire was the supreme power, and lesser species had to accept that fact. "Captain Wusong, you have 60 seconds to begin turning your ship around. If you refuse, I will consider you a hostile force and respond accordingly." "Commander Taemin," came the reply. "I urge you to reconsider. Humanity values respect and peaceful dialogue. We do not wish for conflict, but we will not be bullied or threatened." Taemin's face turned red with anger. This primitive species dared to threaten him? They dared to speak as equals to the Imperial Navy? Bullied? Taemin shouted into the communicator. "You're a single primitive ship facing the might of the Galactic Empire. You have no weapons that could scratch our shields. You have no technology that could match our science. You are insects, trying to threaten eagles." "Sir," Hyojin said urgently, "the energy readings from their ship just spiked. Something's happening." "It's probably their pathetic engines failing," Taemin said. He turned to his weapons officer. "Target their ship. Prepare a warning shot across their bow. Nothing too powerful. We don't want to accidentally destroy them completely." "Yes, sir," the weapons officer replied. Captain Wusong's voice came through the speakers one more time. "Commander, I'm asking you one final time to step back from this path. We did not come here for war. But if you insist on treating us as enemies, you will find that humanity is not as helpless as you believe." Taemin laughed. "Fire the warning shot. Let's show these humans what real power looks like." The Imperial warship's main plasma battery charged up. A bright blue beam of energy shot out across space, aimed to pass just in front of the human vessel. The beam contained enough power to destroy a small moon. But something impossible happened. The plasma beam didn't pass in front of the human ship. Instead, it hit something invisible about 50 meters away from the ship's hull. The beam scattered into thousands of smaller beams that flew off in all directions like sparks from a welding torch. The bridge went completely quiet. Every person stopped what they were doing and stared at the main screen. "What just happened?" Taemin asked. Hyojin's hands shook as she worked her controls. "Sir, they have some kind of shield system, but it's not like anything in our databases. The plasma beam didn't penetrate or overload the shield. It just broke apart." "That's impossible," Taemin said. "No known technology can do that to Imperial weapons." On the screen, the human ship hung in space, completely undamaged. It looked exactly the same as before. Simple metal plates welded together. No obvious weapon systems. No fancy armor plating, but it had just shrugged off a blast that should have vaporized anything within 100 kilometers. Captain Wusong's voice came through the speakers again. He still sounded calm, but now there was something else in his tone. Disappointment. "Commander, Taemin, you have just fired upon a peaceful diplomatic vessel. This is an act of war according to every civilized standard in the galaxy. However, humanity is willing to overlook this action if you are prepared to begin respectful negotiations immediately." Taemin stared at the screen. His mind tried to process what he had just seen. The most powerful weapon on his ship had been completely useless against this primitive-looking vessel. "That's not possible," he whispered. But even as he said it, he knew something terrible had just happened. Something that would change everything he thought he knew about the galaxy. Intelligence Director Miran sat in her secure office deep inside the Imperial Palace on the capital world. 3 days had passed since Admiral Kyung-hee's encounter with the human fleet. 3 days of emergency meetings, frantic research, and growing panic among the Empire's leadership. The reports kept getting worse. Human ships were appearing throughout Imperial space, not as invaders, but as calm observers. They would jump into a system, scan everything in sight, then jump away before Imperial forces could respond. They seemed to know exactly where Imperial ships were at all times. Miran's best agents were working around the clock, trying to find any information about these humans. What they discovered was terrifying. Agent Hansol entered her office with a stack of data tablets. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Director, we found evidence of human presence dating back over 50 years, he said, setting the tablets on her desk. Miran picked up the first tablet and started reading. 50 years? That's impossible. We would have detected them. Apparently not. Look at this. Hansol activated a holographic display that showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots appeared scattered throughout Imperial territory. Each red dot represents evidence of human activity that we missed at the time. Hidden observation posts, masked sensor readings, unexplained energy signatures that we dismissed as natural phenomena. There were hundreds of red dots. They covered nearly every major Imperial system. They've been watching us, Miran said quietly. For 50 years they've been studying us without our knowledge. It gets worse, Hansol continued. He touched the hologram, and new information appeared. We found records of similar activity in every major empire in the galaxy. The hegemony, the Federation, the Trade Consortium, everyone. The humans have been mapping and studying the entire galaxy while remaining completely hidden. Miran felt a chill run down her spine. The Empire prided itself on having the best intelligence service in the galaxy. They knew about every ship movement, every political development, every technological advance among their rivals. But these humans had been operating under their noses for decades without detection. How is that possible? She asked. We're still analyzing their technology, but preliminary reports suggest they use some kind of quantum masking system. Their ships can become completely invisible to our sensors. Not stealth technology like we know it. True invisibility. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Fleet Admiral Dong Wook stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive exploration vessel Discovery. Unlike Imperial ships with their golden decorations and ceremonial designs, human ships were built for function. Every surface served a purpose. Every system was designed for efficiency and reliability. Dong Wook was a quiet man who preferred exploration to warfare. He had spent his entire career mapping unknown regions of space and making contact with new civilizations. The current crisis with the Empire made him sad. He had hoped that humanity's first contact with a galactic power would lead to friendship and cooperation. Admiral, called out Navigation Officer Yun-Su, we're receiving reports from scout ships throughout the galaxy. The Empire is mobilizing every fleet they have. Intelligence estimates they're preparing for a full-scale war. Dong Wook sighed. Any word from the diplomatic team? Ambassador Jae Young is still trying to arrange formal talks, but the Empire refuses to meet with us. They keep demanding that we surrender and submit to their authority. They don't understand, Dong Wook said. They think this is about conquest and dominance. They can't imagine that we simply want to be left alone to explore the universe in peace. Science Officer Young Mi looked up from her station. Admiral, we've completed the analysis of Imperial technology based on the recent encounters. The results are significant. Dong Wook walked over to her station. Young Mi was the smartest person he had ever met. She had 3 doctoral degrees and spoke 12 languages. If she said something was significant, it usually meant the universe was about to change. Show me, Dong Wook said. Young Mi activated her display screen. Complex diagrams and equations filled the monitor. Imperial technology is approximately equivalent to what humanity achieved about 200 years ago. Their plasma weapons, their ship designs, their computer systems, all of it is outdated by our current standards. 200 years? Dong Wook asked. Are you certain? Completely certain. Their energy production methods are inefficient. Their materials science is primitive. Their understanding of quantum physics appears to be limited to basic applications. Dong Wook studied the data. It explained why human defensive systems had so easily stopped Imperial attacks. The Empire's weapons were like arrows trying to penetrate a modern tank. How did this happen? He asked. How did we advance so much faster than a civilization that's thousands of years old? Young Mi smiled sadly. Because they stopped trying to improve. When you believe you're already the best at everything, you stop pushing the boundaries of knowledge. The Empire has been stagnant for centuries while we've been racing to understand the universe. Back on the Imperial capital, emergency council sessions continued around the clock. The Empire's greatest leaders, scientists, and military commanders gathered in the massive crystal dome that served as the government center. Emperor Hyuk, supreme ruler of the Galactic Empire, sat on his golden throne and listened to one disaster report after another. He was an old man who had ruled for 60 years. He had seen the Empire conquer dozens of worlds and defeat every enemy. Nothing had ever threatened imperial supremacy before. "Your Majesty," said Defense Minister Gangmin, "our military analysts believe we may be facing a civilization with technology centuries ahead of our own. Our standard weapons appear to be completely useless against their defenses." "Centuries?" the Emperor asked. "How is that possible? We have ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. We have access to the combined knowledge of 1,000 conquered worlds." Science advisor Namwook stepped forward nervously. He was a thin man with nervous habits who preferred working in his laboratory to speaking in the royal court. "Your Majesty, our investigation suggests that these humans have made breakthrough discoveries in several areas of physics that we considered theoretically impossible. Their ships appear to use technologies based on principles we don't understand." "Give me specifics," the Emperor commanded. Namwook activated a holographic projector. Images of human ships appeared in the air above the council chamber. Their defensive systems don't actually block incoming attacks. Instead, they appear to alter the fundamental forces that hold matter and energy together. When our plasma weapons hit their shields, the plasma simply ceases to exist as a coherent energy form. The council chamber fell silent. Several advisors looked confused. Others looked frightened. "They can manipulate the fundamental forces of physics?" the Emperor asked quietly. "It appears so, Your Majesty. They also seem to have developed faster-than-light communication, matter conversion systems, and artificial intelligence far beyond anything we've achieved." General Osyok, the Empire's highest-ranking military officer, stood up from his seat. He was a large man with scars from many battles. "Your Majesty, I recommend that we immediately contact every ally and neutral power in the galaxy. If these humans are truly as advanced as we believe, we may need to form a coalition to defend against them." "Defend against them?" asked Foreign Minister Park Jung. "Have they actually attacked us? From what I understand, we fired first in every encounter." General Osyok's face turned red. "They threatened imperial authority. They refused to submit to our demands because they don't recognize our authority over them," Park Jung replied. "They claim to represent an independent civilization. By galactic law, they have the right to exist freely unless they attack us first." "Galactic law?" Osyok shouted. "We are the Empire. We make the laws." Emperor Hyuk raised his hand for silence. The argument stopped immediately. "Gentlemen, we are facing the greatest crisis in imperial history. These humans have appeared from nowhere with technology that makes our military obsolete. They have been operating in our territory for decades without our knowledge. And from what our intelligence services tell me, they have similar information about every other major power in the galaxy." He stood up from his throne and walked to the large window that looked out over the capital city. Millions of lights stretched to the horizon, the greatest city in the galaxy, built with the wealth and labor of 1,000 conquered worlds. The question is not whether we can defeat them in war. Clearly we cannot. The question is whether we can find a way to coexist with them without losing everything we have built. In the silence that followed, everyone in the council chamber realized that the age of imperial dominance might be coming to an end. Admiral Kyung-hee received the emergency message while she was eating her morning meal in her private quarters. The message came directly from Commander Taemin's ship, marked with the highest priority code. She read the report twice before she believed it. A single alien vessel had somehow deflected Imperial weapons fire. Taemin requested immediate backup and suggested that the unknown ship might have stolen Imperial technology. Kyung-hee had commanded Imperial fleets for 30 years. She had fought pirates, rebels, and enemy empires. She had never seen anything that could stop Imperial plasma weapons so easily. But Taemin was a good officer. He wouldn't lie about something like this. She ordered her entire battle group to jump to Taemin's location. 12 heavy cruisers, 6 destroyers, and her flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Glory. If these humans had somehow acquired advanced technology, they would learn that the Empire had much more where that came from. Meanwhile, on Taemin's ship, Chief Scientist So Young worked frantically at her computer station. She had recorded every detail of the human ship's defensive display. The data made no sense. The energy readings are impossible, she muttered to herself. The shield didn't absorb the plasma beam. It didn't redirect it. It somehow broke the molecular bonds that held the beam together. Her assistant, a young technician named Gitai, looked over her shoulder at the screen. Could they be using some kind of new physics we don't understand? So Young shook her head. The Empire has studied physics for thousands of years. We know every force in the universe. There's no way to simply dissolve a plasma beam like that. But the recordings didn't lie. The human ship had done something. That should have been impossible. On the human ship Indomitable, Captain Wu Sung sat in his command chair and sighed. He had hoped this first contact would go better. The reports from the scout ships had suggested that the Galactic Empire was arrogant and aggressive, but he had wanted to give them a chance. Chief Engineer Jin Ho walked onto the bridge carrying a sandwich and a cup of coffee. He looked completely relaxed, as if nothing unusual had happened. "Captain," Jin Ho said between bites of his sandwich, "the quantum field generators are running at only 2% power. Should I shut them down to save energy?" "Keep them running," Wu Sung replied. "I have a feeling we're going to need them soon." Communications Officer Da Yun looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple ships jumping into the system. Looks like 12 or 13 vessels, all much larger than the first ship we encountered." Wu Sung nodded. He had expected this. The Empire couldn't let a challenge to their authority go unanswered. "Any word from Fleet Command?" "Admiral Dongwook sent a message an hour ago. He says the research fleet is ready if we need backup, but he hopes we can handle this diplomatically." "So do I," Wu Sung said. Admiral Kyung Hee's fleet dropped out of hyperspace in a perfect battle formation. The massive ship spread out in a wide arc, surrounding the area where the human vessel waited. Each ship was easily 5 times larger than anything in the human fleet that the Empire knew about. Kyung Hee studied the human ship on her main screen. It looked even more primitive than Tai Min had described. The hull was simple metal with obvious welding marks. She could see what looked like observation windows instead of proper sensor arrays. It looked like something a mining company might build, not a warship. "That thing defeated our weapons?" she asked her tactical officer. "According to Commander Taemin's report, yes, ma'am. But it might have been a fluke. Or they might have some kind of one-use defensive system that's already burned out." Kyung Hee opened communications with both Taemin's ship and the human vessel. "Captain Wu Sung, this is Admiral Kyung Hee of the Imperial Navy. You are now surrounded by 13 Imperial warships. Each one of my vessels carries enough firepower to destroy a moon. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded." Captain Wu Sung's response came through clearly. "Admiral, I greet you with respect. As I told Commander Taemin, we come in peace. We have no desire for conflict with your empire. We only wish to establish diplomatic relations. You lost the right to diplomatic treatment when you threatened an imperial officer," Kyung Hee replied. "Power down your engines and surrender, or we will destroy you." On the human ship, Jin Ho finished his sandwich and walked over to the engineering station. "Captain, should I bring the defensive systems up to full power?" "Not yet," Wu Sung said. "Let's see if they're serious about this." Admiral Kyung Hee waited exactly 60 seconds, then gave the order. "All ships target the alien vessel. Fire on my command." 13 Imperial warships charged their weapons. The space around the human ship began to glow with the energy buildup, from plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and antimatter projectors. It was enough concentrated firepower to crack a planet's crust. "Fire," Kyung Hee commanded. The combined attack launched toward the human ship from every direction. Dozens of energy beams and explosive projectiles converged on the single target. The light was so bright that the automatic filters on every Imperial ship activated to protect the crew's eyes. For a moment, the human ship completely disappeared inside a ball of pure energy. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. Then the light faded. The human ship hung in space, completely undamaged. It looked exactly the same as before. Not even a scorch mark on the simple metal hull. Every bridge on every Imperial ship went completely silent. "How is that possible?" Admiral Kyung Hee whispered. On her tactical display, she could see that every weapon had hit the target. The energy reading showed that the attack had been successful. But the human ship was still there, still intact, still showing no signs of damage at all. So Young's voice came over the communication system from Taemin's ship. She sounded terrified. "Admiral, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the human vessel. Whatever they're using for defense, it's not even working hard. The power output suggests they could have absorbed 10 times more firepower without any trouble." Captain Woo-sung's voice came through the speakers. He still sounded calm, but now there was a note of sadness in his voice. "Admiral Kyung-hee, you have now attacked a peaceful vessel twice without provocation. This is clearly an act of war. However, humanity does not wish to fight you. We will give you one more chance to step back and begin proper diplomatic discussions." "Impossible," Kyung-hee muttered. "Nothing can withstand that much firepower. Nothing." Her tactical officer leaned over and whispered, "Admiral, should we retreat and call for reinforcements?" Before she could answer, her sensor operator called out in panic. "Admiral, new contacts appearing on long-range sensors, multiple ships jumping into the system." The main screen changed to show the wider star system. Dozens of new ships were appearing out of hyperspace. Ships that looked similar to the human vessel but larger. Much larger. "How many?" Kyung-hee asked. 50, 60. "Still counting, Admiral. They're surrounding our entire fleet." Jin-ho looked up from his engineering console and spoke to Captain Woo-sung. "Captain, Admiral Dong-wook sends his regards. He says the research fleet will maintain position unless you need assistance." Woo-sung nodded. "Thank you, Jin-ho. Admiral, please tell Dong-wook that we still hope to resolve this peacefully." On Admiral Kyung-hee's ship, the sensor readings showed that her 13 warships were now completely surrounded by over 60 human vessels. Each human ship was larger than her flagship, and if they all had the same impossible defensive systems as the first ship, "Dear gods," she whispered, "what have we stumbled into?" The news spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within 2 weeks of the first contact incident, every major civilization knew about the humans and their impossible technology. The reaction was not what the Empire had hoped for. The mining world of Kepler-7, a planet that had been under imperial rule for 800 years. Rebel leader Hyun-woo called an emergency meeting of the underground resistance. Representatives from 12 different worlds attended via secure holographic link. "Brothers and sisters," Hyun-woo said to the assembled group, "for centuries, we have been told that the Empire is invincible, that their technology and military power make resistance hopeless. But now we have proof that the Empire can be defeated." The holographic images of rebel leaders from across Imperial space nodded in agreement. They had all seen the leaked recordings of Imperial weapons failing against human ships. Boram, leader of the resistance on the agricultural world of New Harvest, spoke up. "My contacts in Imperial intelligence confirm the reports. These humans have technology that makes Imperial weapons look like toys from children." "The question is," said Hyun-woo, "what do we do with this information?" "We revolt," said Taeho, from the industrial world of Iron Mountain. "If the Empire's military is obsolete, now is the time to strike for our freedom." Others weren't so sure. Soo-jin from the research colony of Bright Star shook her head. "The Empire still has millions of soldiers and thousands of ships. Even if their weapons are outdated, they can still cause massive destruction." Hyun-woo had been thinking about this for days. "We don't need to fight the Empire directly. We just need to show our people that Imperial power is not absolute. Once people see that the Empire can be challenged, the rebellion will spread by itself." Meanwhile, in the luxurious conference room of the Trade Consortium headquarters, the galaxy's most powerful business leaders were having their own crisis meeting. The consortium had built its wealth by staying neutral in political conflicts and selling to all sides. But the emergence of humanity threatened to disrupt everything. CEO Min-ai, the most powerful person in the consortium, studied reports from her intelligence network. "Ladies and gentlemen, we may be looking at the complete restructuring of galactic civilization. If these humans are as advanced as they appear, every existing power balance will shift." Board member Young-soo raised his hand. What do we know about their economic system? Are they interested in trade? That's the strange part, Mine replied. According to our analysis, they don't seem to need anything from us. Their technology allows them to convert basic matter into any material they need. They can create energy from nothing. They have no apparent resource shortages. Then what do they want? Asked another board member. Knowledge, apparently. They seem to be explorers and scientists above everything else. They want to study the universe, not conquer it. This worried the consortium leaders even more than military conquest would have. If the humans didn't need to trade for resources, the entire galactic economy could collapse. Back on the imperial capital world, Empress Yunseo had taken direct control of the crisis. Emperor Janghyuk had suffered a heart attack during a particularly stressful council meeting and was recovering in the medical center. The burden of saving the empire now fell on his daughter's shoulders. Yunseo was younger than most imperial leaders, only 45 years old. But she was brilliant and had been preparing for leadership her entire life. She understood that traditional imperial approaches would not work with the humans. Ambassador Jae-young, she said to the holographic image on her communication screen, I am prepared to offer formal recognition of human independence and territorial rights. In exchange, we ask for a non-aggression pact and technology sharing agreements. Ambassador Jae-young sat in the comfortable cabin of the human diplomatic ship that had been waiting at the edge of imperial space for 2 weeks. She was a small woman with kind eyes and a gentle voice, but she had negotiated treaties with dozens of alien civilizations. Your Majesty, Jae-young replied, I appreciate your willingness to negotiate. However, I must point out that humanity has never threatened imperial territory or citizens. We simply wish to exist as an independent civilization without interference. But your technology, Yunseo began. Our technology is defensive, Jae-young interrupted gently. We have no desire to conquer anyone or control anything beyond our own space. We are explorers and scientists. We want to learn about the universe and make friends with peaceful civilizations. Then why do you have such massive military fleets? Yunseo asked. Jae-young smiled sadly. Because every time we try to make peaceful contact with someone, they start shooting at us. We learned long ago that the galaxy is full of aggressive civilizations that only understand strength. This was not the answer Yunseo had expected. She had assumed the humans were conquerors like every other powerful species in galactic history. You're saying you only want peace? That's exactly what I'm saying. But peace requires mutual respect. The Empire's policy of demanding submission from all other civilizations makes peaceful coexistence impossible. Yunseo felt frustrated. Her entire life had been built around the idea of imperial supremacy. The Empire ruled because it was the strongest, the most advanced, the most worthy. If that was no longer true, what are you proposing? She asked. A new galactic order, Jae-young replied. One based on cooperation instead of domination. One where different civilizations can interact as equals instead of conquerors and subjects. The Empire has ruled for 3,000 years, Yunseo said quietly. Our subjects depend on imperial protection and guidance. Your subjects are ready for independence, Jae-young replied. Many of them have been ready for centuries. They only submitted because they had no choice. As if to prove her point, reports began flooding into the Imperial Communication Center. Rebellions were breaking out on worlds throughout Imperial space. Not violent uprisings, but organized declarations of independence. Planet after planet announced that they were withdrawing from Imperial authority and requesting recognition as independent states. The rebels weren't using violence because they didn't need to. They simply stopped obeying Imperial orders. When Imperial governors tried to enforce their authority, local populations refused to cooperate. When Imperial fleets threatened bombardment, the rebels pointed to the human fleet that was monitoring the situation. Defense Minister Kang Min burst into the Empress's private office without waiting for permission. Your Majesty, we have reports of independence declarations from over 200 worlds. The rebellion is spreading faster than we can respond to it. Yunseo closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Are they attacking Imperial forces? No, Your Majesty. They're simply ignoring our authority. But if we try to use force to maintain control, the humans have announced that they will consider it an act of aggression against peaceful populations. So our choice is to let the empire break apart or go to war with a civilization that can destroy us. That appears to be the situation, yes. Yunseo looked out her window at the great city below. In 3,000 years, no external force had ever threatened the imperial capital. Now, everything her ancestors had built was crumbling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. "Get me a direct line to Admiral Dongwook," she said finally. "It's time for the Empire to learn how to negotiate as equals." 6 months later, the first Galactic Peace Summit was held on New Geneva Station, a massive neutral space station that the humans had built specifically for diplomatic meetings. Representatives from over 300 worlds and civilizations gathered in the largest diplomatic event in galactic history. Empress Yunseo walked through the station's corridors, amazed by what she saw. The human construction was unlike anything in imperial architecture. Instead of gold decorations and ceremonial displays of wealth, everything was designed for function and comfort. The walls were covered with viewing panels that showed the beauty of nearby star systems. Gardens with plants from dozens of worlds provided peaceful spaces for quiet conversation. "It's remarkable," she said to her aide, Secretary Wu Jin. "They built this entire station in just 4 months." "According to our intelligence reports," Wu Jin replied, "they used matter conversion technology. They can transform raw asteroids into any material they need in a matter of hours." Yunseo had spent the last 6 months learning about human technology and society. What she discovered had changed her understanding of everything. The humans were not conquerors or empire builders. They were explorers and teachers who genuinely wanted to help other civilizations achieve their potential. In the main conference hall, Admiral Dongwook stood at the central podium, addressing the assembled delegates. He looked tired, but hopeful. The last 6 months had been difficult for humanity as well. They had never wanted to become involved in galactic politics, but circumstances had forced their hand. "Friends and colleagues," Dongwook said to the crowd, "we gather here today not as conquerors and subjects, but as equals sharing the same galaxy. Humanity proposes the establishment of a Galactic Cooperation Council, where every civilization can participate as a full partner in shaping our shared future." The reaction from the audience was mixed. Representatives of former imperial worlds cheered and applauded. Representatives of the major empires looked worried and uncertain. They weren't sure how to function in a galaxy where military power wasn't. The final authority, Dr. Chan Wu, one of humanity's leading scientists, presented the next part of the proposal. He was a young man who had dedicated his life to terraforming research and environmental restoration. "Humanity is prepared to share our advanced technologies with all peaceful civilizations," he announced. "We have developed solutions to energy, scarcity, food production, environmental damage, and interstellar transportation. These technologies will be provided freely to any world that commits to peaceful coexistence." A representative from the mining world of Titan's Edge stood up. "What do humans want in return for this technology?" Chanwu smiled. "Nothing except the promise that you will use these gifts to help your people and neighbors, not to build weapons or conquer others." The representative sat down, looking confused. In his experience, no one ever gave away valuable technology without expecting something in return. In a smaller conference room, former Imperial Intelligence Director Mi Ran met privately with several human officials. She had requested this meeting to discuss something that had been troubling her for months. "I need to understand something," she said to Science Officer Young Mi. "How did humanity advance so far so quickly? Your entire civilization is only a few thousand years old, but you've achieved technology that the Empire couldn't develop in 30,000 years." Young Mi had been expecting this question. The answer is simple but difficult for most galactic civilizations to accept. We never stop trying to improve. "I don't understand. Look at the Empire's history. 3,000 years ago, you conquered most of the galaxy. At that point, your leaders decided they had achieved perfection. Why keep researching new technologies when you already had the best weapons? Why explore unknown regions of space when you already controlled the most valuable Systems? Why question established theories when your scientists already had all the answers? Miran nodded slowly. It was true. The Empire had become satisfied with its achievements and stopped pushing the boundaries of knowledge. But humans never had that luxury. Young me continued. We were alone on one small planet, knowing that somewhere out there was a vast universe full of mysteries. We had to keep learning and improving just to survive. When we finally reached space, we discovered that we were surrounded by civilizations with thousands of years head start on us, so we had to innovate faster than anyone ever had before. And you succeeded. We succeeded because we had to succeed. The Empire failed because it didn't believe it needed to improve. Meanwhile, in another part of the station, former Imperial Officer Yunji was giving a tour to several newly independent planetary representatives. 6 months ago, she had been a loyal Imperial commander who believed completely in Imperial superiority. The encounter with human ships had shattered those beliefs. Now she wore the blue and silver uniform of the Human Imperial Cooperation Fleet, a joint organization that helped maintain peace during the transition period. The key difference, she explained to the group, is that humans see military service as a duty to protect people, not a tool for conquering them. Every human officer I've worked with asks the same question before any action. Will this help people or hurt them? One of the representatives, former slave world leader Baksu, raised his hand. Commander Yunji, how do we know the humans won't eventually become conquerors like everyone else? Power corrupts all civilizations eventually. Yunji had wondered about this herself. I've spent 6 months working closely with human crews. I've seen how they make decisions and what motivates them. They genuinely don't want to rule anyone. They find the idea of governing other species morally objectionable, but they have the power to conquer the entire galaxy if they wanted to. Yes, they do. But they believe that forcing others to obey you is wrong, even if you have good intentions. They want every civilization to choose its own path to development. The tour group visited the station's research center, where human and alien scientists worked together on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. Dr. Chan Wu showed them a working prototype of a terraforming device that could restore damaged ecosystems in just a few years. This technology could solve the environmental problems on hundreds of worlds, he explained. Planets that were strip-mined or polluted during the Imperial period can be returned to their natural beauty. Baksu stared at the device in amazement. His home world had been turned into a toxic wasteland by centuries of forced resource extraction. How long would it take to heal a world like mine? About 3 years for complete restoration, Chan Wu replied. We've already begun the process on 17 former Imperial worlds. The results have been remarkable. As the summit continued, it became clear that the galaxy was changing in ways no one had expected. The human approach to civilization was spreading rapidly. Instead of competition and conquest, worlds were beginning to cooperate and share resources. Instead of hoarding technology and knowledge, civilizations were working together to solve common problems. On the final day of the summit, Admiral Dong Wook made one last announcement that surprised everyone. Friends, humanity has one more gift to share with you. Our deep space exploration teams have discovered evidence of an external threat to our galaxy. Something is approaching from the void between galaxies, something that appears to be hostile to all forms of organic life. The conference hall fell silent. Representatives who had been arguing about trade agreements and territorial boundaries suddenly realized they faced a common enemy. We estimate that this threat will reach the outer rim of our galaxy in approximately 50 years, Dongwook continued. No single civilization, no matter how advanced, can face this challenge alone. We will need every world, every species, every mind working together if we hope to survive. Empress Yunseo stood up from her seat. 6 months ago, she would have seen this as an opportunity to re-establish imperial authority. Now she understood that survival required cooperation, not domination. The Empire pledges its full support to the Galactic Defense Alliance, she announced. Whatever differences we may have had in the past, we are all children of this galaxy. We will stand together against any threat that seeks to destroy us. One by one, representatives from across the galaxy stood and pledged their support. Former enemies became allies. Conquered worlds and their former rulers agreed to work as partners. The galaxy was finally beginning to fulfill its potential as a community of civilizations united by common purpose. As the summit concluded, Captain Wu Sung stood on the observation deck of his ship, looking out at the stars. His first officer, Lieutenant He Wan, joined him at the viewing window. "Captain, do you think we did the right thing? Getting involved in galactic politics, I mean." Wu Sung smiled. "6 months ago, I would have said no. We came here to explore and learn, not to reshape civilizations. But sometimes you don't get to choose your role in history. The other captains are calling you the man who ended the age of empires. I hope they're wrong. I hope I'm the man who began the age of cooperation." Together, they watched the ships of 100 different civilizations preparing to depart for their homeworlds. Each ship carried with it the seeds of a new kind of galactic civilization,